Hey, what's up, man? This is a vid for Arkham Reporter. Happy birthday, mate. In terms of 80s horror, I mean, 80s and 90s, you have so many horror films, but in terms of the 80s, I'll stick with that. I don't know if you've seen these films or not, or if you watching this, but these films to me epitomize the 80s. Return of the Living Dead. Okay, uh, funny, right? It's a has a punk rock soundtrack. It's nasty as hell. The zombies can't be shot in the head, right? Um, the ending is it's about the ending you would expect if you actually had, uh, you know, uh, the government getting involved. Of course, in the end, you see that they kind of caused it from the very beginning, and they just make it worse at the end. And of course, all the police, right? And send more paramedics. Right? Remember that one? Next to useless, has that feeling that you feel now, right? Very applicable to as we get closer to the, the end cycle of a civilization. But Return of the Living Dead is a lot of fun, man. A lot of fun, right? Like, remember the guy in the beginning? This ain't a uniform. This is way of life, right? The punk rocker dude. Very 80s. Now, Friday the 13th is literally the 80s personified, but if you want to get into it, Jason Lives, part 6, when Jason comes back for real as like more than superhuman. This is the 80s, the epitome of it if you watch it. You got the Alice Cooper song, right? When he came back with the, actually a very kind of poppy song. But just the whole film is just, it has that humor that you have in the 80s, which always mixed well with the what was going on. So even Freddy, as much as Freddy became more of a wisecracker, it was very man. It was very clever. In this film, the scene where you have remember the people are doing paintball. You have like these yuppie assholes doing like some kind of paintball thing in the woods, right? And they run into Jason, and with them you have like this woman who shows them up, and she's so proud, but she's just fodder for Jason, like the rest of them. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. I mean, you see this, it's like 80s. You can say the same thing for part 7, of course, part 8, where he goes to Toronto, Manhattan, DFC Suns, to round out the 80s. But yeah, I mean, this one especially, this is the most like 80s where the decade takes a flavor of its own. Rock and roll, the kids, right, are like trying to fight against the man. And it's funny, and there's no hope. Yo, Fright Night, another man. Fright Night, what a fucking great movie this was, man. Special effects are in it. You have a bunch of great actors, of course. You have what's her name? Marcy from Married with Children. I always call her Marcy. Playing the young girlfriend of the guy whose name is not listed here, the actor, because the other people are more popular. And of course, Ryan McDowell was always great as the horror host. But this movie, man, it's funny, it's campy, it's very 80s. Right, like the scene where they go in the nightclub and the vampires just killing bouncers left and right, and the cool scene where Evil Ed warns what's his name? Jerry, right? He warns him, oh, don't worry, the vampire can't come in your house unless he's invited, right? And of course, he comes downstairs and mom's like, hey, I invited our new neighbor over, and you see the vampire there. Hey, how you doing, Jerry? You know, and it's like, you see his face. That was a great scene in general. So, I mean, Fright Night, man, the special effects, the ending of it, right? You have to have faith for that to work. Remember that? Yeah. Great, just yeah, man, friggin' in 1985, like I said, the middle of the decade is when this stuff really starts to take its flavor, let's say. Of course, one of my favorite films of the 80s, Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. Like this film, Arkham, I don't know if you've seen this, but man, this movie is more chilling every year. The soundtrack I've been listening to the soundtrack vinyl rips a lot this week. Amazing Carpenter music, but the whole film, crazy, gory, almost like science fiction, apocalyptic, a satire on America, which all these films are essentially as well, which is kind of fun to see. Yeah. And you think, I don't know what to say, man. Halloween 3. I keep saying this is one of the best films of the 80s, and I challenge anybody to say otherwise when you watch this. And Tom Atkins is awesome. Like I said, he's the alcoholic, divorced dude who's trying to get in the pants of the heroine. That's why he's even in the movie. Very 80s. Night of the Creeps, right? Your dates are here, and they're dead, right? This is a crazy... It's a zombie alien invasion parasite film, and the hero from Halloween 3, the actor Tom Atkins, is in this as well, playing kind of like a rough kind of detective who has a history with what these aliens were. Well, I'm saying crazy. The kids are all having fun. It's amazing seeing how different people looked back then, in living memory. Yeah, Fred Decker did it. And the special effects, in terms of all these films too, in terms of the 80s feeling, right? Not just the way the mullets, as they call them now, the big hair, the just craziness, but the special effects. Everything is practical and pushing the boundaries of gore, exploding heads, just everything. And the next film I want to just briefly mention, it even takes that to a further level. This remake of the original Blob is amazing, right? Shot in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania. But this film, man, this was... talk about keeping with the times, right? All special effects, very gory, very gruesome. This one in particular is very dark, okay? The original The Blob is an alien. In this one, The Blob has, let's say, origins closer to home, okay? And the military comes in, just like in the films they usually do, and they really start to throw their weight around. Oh, that Ronald Reagan. Oh, yeah. Looks like it wasn't that paradigm that did it. But the thing too, the infamous scene too with that kid, where there's a kid in it who's the friend of one of the hero, the main kid, little brother. And something happens in that you didn't expect. I remember being shocked at it, and I saw this on television where it was cut. And the Blob is just nasty, man. He rips people in half to get to them. It's just, he melts people slowly. You see them melt like you couldn't see in the original. But 80s, man, totally 80s, and like I said, with a dark edge, very dark edge. The 80s, I will say, it was like, oh, it was more fun back then. The deviltry was already happening. It was already too late in the 80s. You just couldn't tell, but some of it was poking through. And unfortunately, it was poking through maybe the more liberal end of things, let's say, which was a huge, huge sabotage and mistake, in my opinion, which is why we're at now. But whatever. Still, man, this movie, oh. All right, just round it out with the other Living Dead film of the 80s, Day of the Dead. Talk about dark, mean-spirited, okay? And a fascinating film in regards. The gore is probably the nastiest gore Tom Savini ever did. It's funny, when you watch the film, okay, you're supposed to root, obviously, for the plucky scientists and the Jamaican dude. What you do, the Jamaican guy in this movie has probably one of the greatest monologues in one of these films. And the military guys are all evil, white, racist, totally, without merit. But for some reason, when you watch this film, I feel like they steal the movie, okay? Also, Frankenstein, the doctor, kind of steals it too. But the crazy dude and the military guys who are at the end of their wits kind of steal the movie in a way, okay? Of course, next to Bub, the hero. Great movie, very dark. And also, you could say, oh, this is what brought what we have today, if you think about it, right? It's very anti-white male in this film. But, it was a different time, okay? You could flip things. You could sort of, and to be frank, to be fair to Romero's treatment, the military guys in this, whatever you think of them, it's understandable what they're going through as well when you think about it. So it was actually a more nuanced film than you think. But I remember when this came out, too. This came out, it was rated X. They didn't release it. It wasn't released like these other films I've been showing you. I think I saw it when I was walking with my dad through Times Square in the 80s, going to the Musicians Union. Amongst the other horrors, I saw that there was this film being advertised, but it wasn't all over. It didn't get a wide release because George would not He would not submit cuts to it. And if you see this film, holy crap, the ending is the goriest thing you've ever seen. Like I said, it's one of those films where I can still appreciate it, and it's fun to see. Is it pointing towards the way of today in a way not even intended by George, right? But like what I say, don't confuse symptoms for causes. And regardless, man, this movie, recommended. Arkham, if you haven't seen any of these, man, check them out, and look at the decade that was at one point. Yeah, where everybody, like that meme, everyone remembers it like, oh yeah, you had all the fluorescent stuff. Meanwhile, the truth is, most of the people's houses had those fake wooden paneling walls on. All right, man, that's the 80s, man. 80s forever.